Good evening, everyone. We might get started now. Okay, fantastic. Yarra City Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people as the traditional owners and true sovereigns of the land now known as Yarra. We acknowledge their creative spirit, Bunjil, ancestors, and their elders. We acknowledge the strengths and resilience of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung, who have never ceded sovereignty and retain their strong connection to family, clan, country, and despite that, the implications of European invasion. We also acknowledge the significant contributions made by other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to life in Yarra. We pay our respects to elders from all nations here today and to their elders past, present and future. In attendance this evening, we have Councillor Jolly, Councillor Ganatzis, Councillor Mohammed, Councillor Landis, Councillor Wade and Councillor Stone. We have apologies from Councillor Nguyen and Councillor O'Brien. CEO, would you like to introduce your staff?
Thank you, Chair. I have Kerry, on my left, I have Kerry McGrath, General Manager of Community Strengthening, Mary Osman, General Manager City Sustainability and Strategy, Sam Hewitt, General Manager Infrastructure and Environment, Brooke Colbert, General Manager Governance, Communications and Customer Service, and Jenny Ciclina, General Manager Corporate Services and Transformation. And on your right, we have Phil.
Thank you. And announcements, we don't have any this evening. Declarations of conflict of interest. Any councillors who have a conflict of interest in a matter being considered at this evening's meeting is required to disclose their interest either by explaining the nature of the conflict of interest to those present or advising that they have disclosed the nature of the interest in writing to the Chief Executive Officer before the meeting commenced. Councillors, do we have any conflicts of interest to clear this evening? I believe we do have one from yourself, Sue.
Yes, Chair. I have a conflict of interest to declare in relation to item 5.1 on the confidential meeting agenda, the Chief Executive Officer key performance indicators, and I'll leave when that part of the meeting happens.
Thank you. We'll now look to have confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting from Tuesday, 18 July, and that they are confirmed. Could I please have a mover and seconder? Yeah, Councillor Jolly, Councillor Glenatzis, all those in favour? That was carried unanimously. Question time. It's now time for questions from a member of the public. I will invite everyone who is registered to ask their questions to meeting in order of registration. When your turn comes, please come forward to the microphone, switch it on and state your name for the record. If you are here on behalf of a group, explain the nature of the group and how you're able to speak on their behalf. We then ask that you direct your questions to myself as Chair, ask the question that you have previously registered, including any background or context to the question, don't engage in debate, and that you then please take your seat after asking your question. You have up to 3 minutes to ask your question, although you don't need to use all of that time. Our first question this evening is from Victoria Chipperfield.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mayor, good evening, Mayor, councillors and heads of department. My name is Victoria Chipperfield and I've been a resident of Richmond for 27 years. For a number of years I've been raising concerns about the deterioration of the natural environment in 3121. I have written emails, sent images, delivered a bag of Euster, used to be a living plant, to a meeting with the previous mayor and reminded the council of the report written in 2017 for the council outlining the risks facing the people of the City of Yarra, including the heat island effect. I've even dressed in a ridiculous outfit while attending a council meeting to draw attention to the environmental degradation of plants and trees, including Burnley Park. So here we are. 2023. Temperatures around the world are breaching rather than reaching any scientific estimates, with people in America, Europe and the UK living in unbearable heat, mainly under the heat dome phenomenon. People are suffering second and third degree burns by stepping on outside surfaces. The built-up areas in the City of Yarra are adding to the inevitable increases in temperatures and puts people, especially the most vulnerable who can't afford or don't have air conditioning, and increasingly even a roof to protect them. Every week, recycling trucks with the City of Yarra logos and website addresses on their sides drive through the streets of Yarra that run on diesel, one of the most polluting fuels, spreading fumes in increasingly densely populated areas. I was advised that these trucks are around 20 years old and the lifting mechanisms for the bins are a safety issue for the operators. It will be cold comfort for all the people in the City of Yarra, and may I say other species, that even the wealthy will be impacted sooner rather than later by the poor decisions and priorities taken by the Council when they are dealing with the catastrophic impact of climate change. Could the Council advise what responsibility does it take in actioning contractors to provide fuel-efficient and occupational health and safety appropriate vehicles?
Thank you for your question. I'll now hand over to Sam Hewitt.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Thanks for your question, Victoria. Council is transitioning its passenger and heavy fleet to fully electric and hybrid technology as quickly as we can. Our fully electric street sweeper is a recent example of this. We'll also expect our contractors to transition their fleet to hybrid and electric option, and will require this when we go to tender next for those recycling services in the next year or two. We're not aware of the recycling trucks being 20 years old. We're pretty confident they're about 10, and we don't believe them to have any OH&S issues, but we'll raise it with the contractors at our next contract management meeting.
Thank you. We'll now go to our next question this evening, and that comes from Anna Rizzo.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Deputy Mayor, councillors and City of Yarra staff. My name is Anna Rizzio. My husband and I moved into Abbotsford in February 2021, so we're fairly new. I'm here this evening representing a new local group, Abbotsford Riverside Residents Association, Yarra. I formed the group in early June as myself and other local residents want to see our part of Abbotsford receive more attention and services than we have in the past few years or the past while. It is undeniable that there has been a residential boom along the riverfront, with more plans in the works for multi-storey buildings. Yarra currently has 240 members and we're growing daily. Yarra intends to be the voice to local government for improvement of services and amenities in our pocket of Riverside, Abbotsford. So in my question this evening, I have referenced some documents which are on your website at the moment, albeit that they are a little bit older. One of them is the Open Space Requirements Policy and the other one is the Open Space Contribution Projects Delivered. My question this evening is, with increased residential developments along the riverbank in Abbotsford, my area of concern is specifically the residential developments from Acacia along the riverfront right through to Flockhart Park, where we estimate this has added about 2,500 new apartments, and of course the residents that come with that. Can the Council demonstrate that your own public open space requirement policy has kept pace with this population growth? According to this document, there is a requirement to collect at least 4.5%, but I believe up to 10.1% of site value from the developer. Your own document then states that these funds are flagged to be used for improvement, maintenance or creation of open spaces directly to benefit this population. The Open Space Contributions Delivered, which lists council funds spent on open spaces between 2010 and 2020, does not specifically refer to any of these parks in our area, even though we clearly have had significant residential developments. In fact, this document shows lots of improvements outside of our area, but not in our area. I've got a little bit more, but I'll get to my questions. How much has been collected from specifically Salter as the developer of green Square, Parkhouse and Walmer and other developers. Where have these funds gone? And when can we see our open spaces improve for better services in this growing community? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now hand over to Mary Osmond to respond. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna, for your question this evening. I might just make a few points of clarification. Council has a set mandatory public open space contribution of 4.5%. That's only applicable to residential subdivisions. At the moment, we do have an amendment that is sitting with the Minister for Planning that is seeking to increase that amount and to increase its applicability to a wider range of types of buildings. Council, as you stated, collects this money, and it does look at either purchasing land or making improvements to existing open space. And Council has spent over $800,000 within this precinct over the last 5 years, and we're looking at doing some improvements to Flockhart Reserve this year as well, specifically to the turf. We do evaluate opportunities for new open spaces. This is a continuous process that we do run throughout the municipality. I don't have specific figures about the amount of money collected from the Salter Property Group, but there is an apportionment of monies that are collected from these developments. Sometimes a contribution is land, as it has occurred on some of the Salter properties, and others is a monetary contribution. But that's probably all I can provide at this point in time as a response. But we will continue to look at the Abbotsford precinct for improvements. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'll now call on Helen Dyson. Helen Dyson? I'm going to assume they may not be in attendance. So that is all the registrations we have tonight, but I'd like to take the opportunity to remind everyone who's here and also those watching at home, if you do have any other questions that you'd like to ask, you're very welcome to register and ask questions at our next council meeting. Thank you. We now move on to the council business reports, which will provide an opportunity for members of the public to address the council. I will invite everyone who is registered to address the council in order of registration. When your turn comes, please switch on the microphone and state your name for the record. If you are speaking on behalf of a group, explain the nature of the group and how you're able to speak on their behalf. We will then ask that you direct the statements to myself as chair and confine your submission to the subject under consideration. Avoid repeating previous submitters if possible, and don't ask questions or seek comments from councillors or others. You'll then have 3 minutes to address the council, but you don't have to use all of that time. And for this first matter, which is the assessment of 7.1, assessment of proposed development plan at 81 to 95 Burnley Street and 26 to 34 Doonside Street, we have one registered speaker, and that is Michael Henderson from Contour Consultants.
Thank you, councillors, and thank you, council officers. My name's Michael Henderson from Contour Town Planning, and I'm representing the applicant for the development plan this evening. By way of background for this development plan, the project team went through a range of pre-application meetings with council officers in late 2021, which preceded the lodgement of the development plan in December 2021. Since that period, over the last 18 months, the development plan has gone through numerous revisions and amendments in concert with the receipt of council referral comments, both internal and external, a number of meetings with council officers, including the planning department, engineering department, their external wind consultant and their external urban design team. This also was accompanied by an on-site meeting with council officers. We're at a stage now that we lodged the most recent development plan earlier this year, and in our view of the project team, it's both a coordinated and considered position that we've put to councillors this evening. At a high level, councillors, the proposals for the retention and restoration of the two heritage buildings on the site, The application will propose the redevelopment to include 4 new independent buildings that will be separated by internal laneways. We're proposing a public open space area of 727 square metres. The dwelling range for the project will be 545 to 656 dwellings, 10% of which will be social housing. The application is proposing commercial floor area of 12,000 to 16,000 square metres. It will be a net zero carbon development. We're proposing new street trees, upgraded footpaths and an updated public realm treatment around the entire perimeter of the site. From an overshadowing perspective, there will be no overshadowing at the key measurements to Appleton Street, Burnley Street and internally within the site, and crucially no overshadowing to the internal laneways and the public open space, which was critical in Council's assessment. We thank officers for the detailed report that accompanied the agenda tonight. We take no issues with what has been tabled, and we welcome any questions from councillors or council officers this evening.
Thank you very much. Councillors, at this point in time, I'll be seeking if you have any questions for officers regarding this matter. Councillor Stone?
Oh, it's for officers, not the submitter. Okay, so to Ms Osmond, the submitter said that there'd be no internal overshadowing, including of the internal laneways. I could be reading this incorrectly, but it does look to me as though the southern part of Park Lane will be overshadowed in the afternoon by the new development. Am I reading that correctly?
Through you, Mayor, I might ask Lara Fiscalini to respond to the specific questions regarding overshadowing.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, there will be overshadowing early morning and in the afternoon of the southern section of Park Lane.
So can I just clarify that at the equinox that it will receive the southern half of that laneway, and it's a public space, will have 1 hour of sunlight, which means that for half the year it will have basically none, and the other half it might have up to 2 in a long day. Is that basically correct?
Through you, Mayor. Correct. There will be partial sunlight throughout the day during the equinox, but yes, the 12 o'clock plan shows that there will be full solar access for the southern section, and yes, that will change in winter and summer.
Yes, Councillor Wade.
Sorry, can I just follow up on that topic again? So does that mean throughout the course of the year it'll have 0 to 2 hours of sunlight?
Through you, Mayor. Correct. At midday there will be no overshadowing. The times will vary depending on where it is during the year. It's very difficult given the orientation of the site. There is going to be some overshadowing in that southern portion. Given the parameters that are allowed to be built via the DPO, even if full compliance was achieved with those parameters, there would still be a degree of overshadowing that is going to occur due to the heights that we're seeing. But yes, the southern end of the laneway is more affected. The northern end definitely receives a good degree of sunlight.
Are there any... Councillor Stone, you have a follow-up question?
So just a minor question this about the naming of new places. We have a convention that we seek traditional owners or Wurundjeri names. The lanes are going to be private, not public, but the park will be a public park. It's already been given a name under this development plan, but is it possible or feasible that Council will select its own name using our own naming conventions?
Through you, Mayor, my understanding is the park, it is a working name that it's been given for us to just do this assessment. It will be vested in Council. My understanding would be that we have the potential to make changes at that time.
Councillor Landis.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for the report. Just on the question of flooding, you refer to 1 in 100 years. Now, given the effects of climate change, and we're starting to see significant events more frequently, why do we choose 1 in 100 years and not 1 in 20 years?
Through you, Mayor. The DPO specifies 1 in 100, so that is in the scheme where it says that the applicant has to respond to a flood analysis based on the 1 in 100. They could choose to go beyond that and do a 1 in 20, but it's not something that we can force them to do because it specifies that in the scheme already.
Councillors, are there any further questions at this point in time? Okay, at this point in time, I will be looking for a way forward. Councillor Landis.
Thank you. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation, but with an amendment, if I can find it. You've got it there, thank you. And that is that insert number 9, that the northeast corner of building D be amended to include a chamfered setback at all levels, and that paragraph 36 explore the opportunity to provide or accommodate community battery technology in the operation of the buildings.
Thank you. Just checking with officers if it's possible to get that up on screen. Yeah.
Sorry? Sorry, that was too blunt. That's all right. Try to let it edge. I haven't got a copy of it anyway.
Thank you. I'll now look for a seconder. Councillor Wade. Councillor Stone, you have a question?
I have an amendment now that there's a seconder.
Yes.
I want to propose a point 9 under the first section, amendments to the height, setbacks and layouts of buildings necessary to increase the extent of sunlight within the southern section of Park Lane.
Councillor Landis.
I'm not happy to accept that, but I'm sort of happy for it to be debated. So the answer is no, I'm not prepared to accept that.
Okay. Councillor Stone, you'll need a seconder for the amendment if you're wanting to move that formally.
It's really tedious, but yes, I will move it, and if there's a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Councillors, is there a seconder to this amendment? Councillor Glenoutzis. Councillor Stone.
Okay, this is a piece of land that is going to add probably 1,000 people to this area. We've heard from a submitter tonight about the lack of open space for the enormous number of new people living here. To their credit, this applicant is providing a park instead of money, 2 laneways that residents, cyclists, pedestrians can use, workers can use. What people want in public space is open sky, fresh air and sunshine, and greenery. They repeatedly tell us that. There is an opportunity here in creating this laneway to maximise the amount of sunlight in it. You only have to look at the CBD laneways where there's no sunlight. There's nobody in them. People, they're not friendly, inviting places to use. It's a wasted opportunity. It may only be possible to increase the amount of sunlight by a little bit, but at least there is a review of this principle, and that there's an opportunity for the applicant to work out how they can do it, whether it's a lot, a medium amount or just a little bit, but to go back and have another look at increasing the extent of sunlight. I cannot see what the issue is. I'll leave it there.
Councillor Analysis.
No, Councillor Stone has said most of it. That's good. I liked it.
All right. We will be able to have those that may want to speak for or against the matter. Yeah.
Thank you. Look, what Councillor Stone has said is quite correct, and I'm not objecting to the intent of where that sentiment is, but I've looked at this shadow diagram all afternoon, and I've asked Councillor Stone where the opportunities are to actually allow this to happen, and a lot of the buildings to the east, which are in place now, and there's a heritage building to the northeast, and then there's the tower itself. Unless there was considerable amount of reworking of the whole scheme, I cannot see how you're going to be able to improve the overshadowing outcome in the laneway to the south. The open space has an orientation to the north, and from what I can see here from the plans, the developer has certainly made a great deal of effort to ensure that there is sunlight to this open space, and he's done that through the articulation of the buildings and using the curvature of the architecture and the sort of ramping down of the top levels to ensure that that area has maximum amount of sunlight. None of this allows the sort of any opportunity to extend the sunlight into the laneway area, and I think it's something that, unfortunately, it is what it is, and I think that that's why I'm sort of knocking it back. Not because that I disagree with the intent, it's just that I think it would require a complete reworking of the whole scheme, and I think that's not where we're at the moment.
Do we have any other speakers for or against? No? Okay, we will then put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. We'll now return to yourself, Councillor Landis.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to compliment the officers on the extent and thoughtful report that has articulated and developed sound evidence-based arguments in respect of this development plan for the area of Richmond. And I say that because we've got the government now contemplating taking power away from council in matters of planning outcomes, and it's worth noting that the council are best placed to weigh the local context when it comes to balancing development applications. I believe this amendment will enhance the scheme by improving the sight lines and the experience for residents using this open space park and the park lane. It will mean removing an intrusive corner that forms a dogleg entrance to the southern part of the laneway, and it also, whilst providing a more inclusive edge to this open space perimeter. And that's why I'm commending this amendment to the plan. Yeah, I'm happy to stop there.
Councillor Wade.
I won't add much. I think these amendments overall take it in a good direction, and my understanding of the Shamford setback was that it was meant to also increase access to Sky, so that's why I voted against the first one, but otherwise nothing to add to what Councillor Landers and Councillor Stone have said.
Thank you. Now, are there any other speakers for or against this? No? As it has been amended, there isn't a right of reply, so we'll now go to a vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. We'll now move on to the... Apologies. We'll now go on to the business item of 7.2, Amendment C286, Yarra, Open Space Contributions Peer Review. For this item, we don't have any registered speakers, so I'll now go straight to councillors if you have any questions for officers at this time. If there are no questions, I'll be looking for a way forward. Councillor Wade.
I've circulated an alternative motion.
If we could please have that on screen.
Yes, that's it. So that's just an addition to what's currently there, just to clarify.
I'll now be looking to have a seconder. Councillor Mohammed. Councillor Stone.
Can I just suggest a tiny amendment in Part C? In front of the word significant open space contributions, just write the word potential, because they haven't actually been lost. They could have been there. They're only potential.
That's fine with me.
And is that okay with seconder, Councillor Mohammed?
Yep, that's fine with me also.
Thank you. Councillor Wade, if you'd like to speak to your motion.
Yes. So firstly, I just wanted to thank officers for bringing us this report and the work that's gone on in the background over many years now with C306 and C286. I think I've got those numbers correct. It's been a long time coming. The Yarra Open Space Strategy in 2020 predated most of the councillors on this council, all bar one sitting here right now. And I think, you know, running back over this, you can really see how the planning panel has complemented the work that the council has done over time and said, obviously some of this is old news, but it's really great to see that work was commended in that way. And then the peer review has really backed up, I think, what we said, even though it's taken a different approach. So it's, interesting to see that they've gotten to 9.4%, and I'm looking forward to seeing officer comments on that in due course. This amendment that I've added is to note, and I think I've complained before about the planning minister and the delays that we've faced on several other amendments, including recently in relation to the zero carbon buildings amendment. That's been over a year now, and we know that would be a very, very good thing for new buildings in our municipality and across the state if we could see those carbon emissions coming from those stationary buildings reduced. C269, a huge amount of work, and we've had delays. And then this one, I think, is the one that, it's hard to say which one offends me the most, but it's very frustrating. We passed it on the 31st of May 2022. Our officers turned around a planning scheme amendment and submitted it to the minister within, I think, 4 days. It was very impressive how quickly we got that in front of the minister, with the hope that we would get that amount increased to 7.4%, which was signed off by a planning panel, independently verified, rigorously tested, and the difference between 4.5% and 7.4% is a lot. Like, that's a lot more money that we would be getting into our open space reserves. That's a lot more money we could be spending on parks. That's a lot more money for 14 months now that we could have been, saving up and putting into open space in our municipality, which is something we know we really need, especially in our high dense areas. We've had Abbotsford speaking tonight about, what we need to see and how we need to accommodate this growing number of people we have in smaller spaces. So it is incredibly frustrating that it has taken this long to get what was an interim amount approved, and that we're now staring down the barrel of a permanent rate when we still still haven't got the interim rate approved. So it's just to, again, write to the Minister to try to emphasise that. And then I've also asked that officers report back at the next council meeting to tell us exactly how much we've lost. My back of, or potentially lost, Councillor Stone, my back of our envelope calculations are in the several million, like, you know, maybe low several million, but that's several million that we could have been putting into parks. That's like 1 or 2 pocket parks. It's a lot. So that's me speaking in favour of this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mohammed.
I think Councillor Wade's passion spoke for itself, so I don't think I could have said it any better. Thank you.
Do we have any other councillors who may want to speak for or against this matter? No? All right, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to our next item, which is 7.3, proposed discontinuance of a portion of land abutting 111 Best Street, Fitzroy North. There are no registered submitters on this item, so councillors, I'll go straight to seeking whether there are any questions for officers on this matter. No? Okay. Well, we will need to seek a way forward. Is there anyone that could help me out on that front? Councillor Wade. To move, we'll need a seconder. Oh, Councillor Stone. Thank you. Councillor Wade, if you could please speak to it.
Nothing in particular to say here. I think the report speaks for itself. Thank you to Mr. Graham for preparing a diligently written report, as always.
Thank you. Councillor Stone.
This is one of those odd pieces of land, of which there are many in Yarra, which are virtually enclosed by another property. They're not publicly needed, but they are publicly defined as a road, so we do need to go through the proper process to see if anyone has an issue with us closing it and selling it to the adjoining property. And this is just initiating that process, and if there are issues, we will have to deal with them. Thank you to the officers for preparing the report.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to this item? No? All right. We'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. All right. That brings us to our next item, which is 7.4. This is for the Burnley Golf Course redesign and risk mitigation works. For this item, we don't have any registrations for submitters, so at this point, councillors, I'll be seeing if you have any questions for officers regarding this matter. Any questions? No? All right, I will then look for a way forward. Councillor Landis, happy to, yeah? And I'll be looking for a seconder. Councillor Mohammed. Councillor Landis, if you'd like to speak to the motion.
Yeah. Very pleased to see that these works are now underway, and I look forward to the new course opening in due course. That's pun, sorry. These works were necessary to ensure that our compliance with our duty of care obligations to prevent nuisance and the liability to public safety and property damage. These works represent a considerable saving on the 6 to 7 million.
Mayor, I don't think the gaps in the motion have been completed with the name of the tenderer and the amount.
Thank you, Councillor.
So, just reading out the recommendation, that Council awards contract C16442 to SJM Turf and Civil Proprietary Limited, ABN 2362475008018 for the Burnley Golf Course redesign and risk mitigation works at a lump sum cost of $2,214,530.47, GST exclusive. Authorises that the officer either acting in the position of or General Manager of Infrastructure and Environment to sign on behalf of Council all necessary documentation, including any contract variations relating to Contract C1644, and authorises Council officers to communicate this information to the extent necessary to give effect to the recommendation. Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. Thanks, Councillor Stone.
Thank you. Councillor Mohammed, would you like to speak to this? Oh,
I'll
sorry,
just echo.
Just confirming it's okay, noting what Councillor Landy said with the additions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take two? Okay.
Sorry, my apologies. Back to Councillor Landy's. My apologies.
Okay, take two. So, yes, I said pleased to see these works are underway and looking forward to the course opening again. And as I said, the works were made necessary to ensure the compliance of our duty of care obligations to prevent nuisance and liability to public safety and property damage. I said that these works represent considerable savings on the $6 to $7 million that had been anticipated to construct a fence on the perimeter of the course. At that time, the time that the decision was made, the government had not shown a willingness to subsidise the fence, nor was Transurban willing to accept the responsibility, and certainly a legal obligation did not exist. It had been up to the previous councils to negotiate such terms when the freeway was widened, and they didn't. It's interesting to note, I just wanted to say that I do know that the successful tender appears to have extensive experience managing the construction of golf courses, and I'm told they did a great job with the construction of the par 3 on the 14th hole at the Cranbourne Golf Club. So well done to the tenderer, and looking forward to an excellent outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mohammed.
I'll just echo Councillor Landers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor, is there anyone else that would like to speak for or against this item? No? All right, we will then put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Okay, all those in favour, if you could please raise your hand. Councillor Stone, Councillor Wade, Councillor Landys, Councillor Crossland, Councillor Mohammed. All those opposed? Councillor Jolly and Councillor Glenatsis. Okay. This now brings us to 7.5, Yarra Grants Review Project, Terms of Reference. We don't have any registered speakers for this item, so I'll now turn to my council colleagues to see if there are any questions. Councillor Stone.
Thank you. Who am I asking? Mr McCall?
Sorry, 1 second. Councillor Jolly. Councillor Stone.
Thank you. I have a question on the role of the proposed advisory group. These are experts, academics and so on from outside Yarra, and I wondered, given that these are a review of grants that are about the Yarra, building the Yarra local community, what the value is of having expert outsiders as an advisory group and what role they will perform, and whether there is a need for a local community member on that committee.
Through you, Chair, as cited in paragraph 23, it says consist of up to 5 members drawn from academic, non-profit, public sector bodies with at least 1 member having a direct connection to the City of Yarra. Is that considered adequate?
That's a very loose thread. A connection could be, anything, could own investment property. So I guess I'm wondering where the input about knowledge of the Yarra community will come from in that advisory group, because that needs to be represented there. So how will that be guaranteed?
Through you, Chair, the expert advisory group is there to provide advice in terms of governance, effective altruism measuring impact. I take your point about the connection to the Yarra community. It could be more clearly defined, and we can definitely accommodate those changes if that was to be moved as an amendment through the resolution tonight. So it could be refined through saying that being explicit in what the connection is, such as a resident or a member of a local non-profit or community organisation, so they are options that are there.
Sorry, I should have phrased this, I guess, for wording, but would representation is what I'm looking for rather than a connection to. So would the word representation, could that be worked in there? Okay.
Yes, 100%.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from councillors at this point in time? Yes, Councillor Stone.
Just on the current objectives, they do seem outdated because we do talk more about building resilience and community capacity. Would they be included as part of this review? There's no need to amend the objectives at this point.
Through you, Chair, I can confirm that those are definitely objectives that we are looking for, but one of the things we are looking for through the review is to actually come up with what the objectives are to be going forward. So in the report, it stated what the current objectives are under paragraph 4, but the idea is to revisit those objectives and see whether they're the objectives we need going forward from here after our program of research and consultation with stakeholders and expert advice.
If I may, we get a lot of requests in the middle of the grant cycle. You know, I had one today and the grant applications closed a couple of weeks ago. Is the review going to look at how to accommodate some of these throughout the year?
Through you, Chair, the review states that one of the parameters that we'll be looking at is the timing and the sequencing of the various grants and streams. And some of them are multi-year, some of them are short and quick response. So we're going to be looking at whether they are responsive to community needs. So I would imagine that if that's an inquiry that you're hearing coming through, that we will hear that as well and we will address that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from councillor colleagues at this time? No? Okay, I will be looking for a way forward. My apologies. Yes, we are looking for a way forward. Councillor Stone.
I can move the officer recommendation, with that tiny tweak. What is it? Tweak. Thank you. To include one member of the expert advisory group that represents the Yarra community. I'm sorry. Do you want that written down?
I think they're just about to get it on screen.
That take out has, and that is able to represent the Yarra community.
I'll now look for a seconder. Councillor Wade. Councillor Stone, would you like to speak to the motion?
Oh, so briefly. This is starting a review of our extensive, well-funded, voluminous grants program, which achieves enormous benefit to the community, as has been demonstrated through many studies, but it hasn't been reviewed for a long time, and this question's been asked for about 3 years. So it's great that we are at the point where we can actually review them and see if we can better leverage funding to benefit community and build their capacity to deal with the many, many challenges we're actually going to be facing in the future. So I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wade.
Yes, echoing that and just thanking officers for kicking this off, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of it. It is an enormous amount of money, the 2.4 million plus when you add the YEF and the Heritage Fund amounts, it's even more. And so that's the sort of thing that you should look at every now and again and make sure it's achieving what we'd like it to achieve and that it's as accessible as possible. I think one of the things that I found interesting in the scope that you've already kind of highlighted as something to look at is establishing whether the program, even whether the CGP, like jargon with the jargon, is accessible to those in the community who are under-resourced, who have been disadvantaged by systemic barriers and social injustice. And I thought that's such a good point. Like, I get confused sometimes when I'm looking at our grant program and I'm like, oh wait, didn't we just look at the community strengthening? Oh no, that was this one, and they're all such different lengths and there's such slightly different requirements. And as Councillor Stone has said, people are trying to enter at different points of the year and aren't necessarily all ready to go in the 1 month window. We've got it open in July. So I think looking at it through that lens and making sure it's accessible to the people that we most need to help is really important, and I was really glad to see that drawn out here. So really looking forward to the work the team comes up with, and I endorse this motion.
Thank you. Do we have any other councillors who would like to speak for or against this? No? All right, we will then put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that was carried unanimously. Thank you. This now brings us to 7.6, Neighbourhood House Partnership Framework, draft for endorsement. We have a number of registered speakers this evening, and first I'd like to call on Tony Milne.
Imagine a world where a father can't read a bedtime story to his child, where a grandmother struggles to communicate with her grandchildren. That's the reality for some in our community. My name is Tony Milne. I'm the Executive Officer of the Carlton Neighbourhood Learning Centre. Today I want to share with you the incredible work we do, lives we transform and hope we bring to the community of Carlton, all with the invaluable support of the Yarra Council. I'm speaking to the agenda item on the Yarra Neighbourhood House Partnership Framework. The Carlton Neighbourhood Learning Centre's 28 staff work with people who experience disadvantage, providing services for migrants and refugees, adult learners, people with disability, alongside our compost and recycling hub and the work we do to mitigate climate change and build community resilience. Our work can range from large events to connect diverse communities through to free community lunches and food relief markets for those experiencing extreme cost of living pressures, alongside programs to get the long-term unemployed into work or further education. I'd like to thank the Mayor, councillors and council staff for the thorough and well-run consultation to develop the partnership framework and for your recognition of the vital role that we play in the community and the work that we do, work that transforms lives. A man who left school unable to read, who came to us to learn to read because he's about to become a father and wants to be able to read a bedtime story to his firstborn child. A grandmother who has lived in Melbourne for decades, who came to us because she wants to learn English to better communicate with her grandchildren. A refugee from Ukraine who came to us because she's fled the Russian invasion and wants to build a new life here in Australia. A man in alcohol rehab who's been out of work for more than a year and wants our staff to support him to get a job. A household of university students who are part of 700 households registered to drop off food waste to our compost hub to prevent food waste from going to landfill and preventing damaging climate emissions. Neighbourhood houses are deeply connected to the aspirations of the community, and our work could only be possible with the support of the Yarra Council. The partnership framework builds upon the strong relationship between council and neighbourhood houses, outlining actions to boost collaboration to enable Yarra residents to participate fully in social and civic life. A framework that connects our work to the strategic priorities of council. Thank you for the framework And if you haven't already been to our community centre, you are all invited to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your submission and the warm invitation. I'd now like to call on Leanne Conlon.
Oh, I think I might have written this a bit small, sorry. So I'm Leanne Coghlan. I'm here to thank Council for their ongoing support for Yarra's neighbourhood houses. I run Alphington Community Centre, which is one of the smaller neighbourhood houses in Yarra. We have just 2.6 effective full-time staff, but have direct contact with at least 1,000 people in our local community each week. Our house began life as a babysitting club and a toy library more than 40 years ago now. I discovered this amazing resource about 16 years ago when I was on maternity leave and was home with my kids feeling lonely and looking to build new social connections. Kids' dance classes, playgroups and family-friendly fitness classes were my entry points into the wonderful world of Yarra's neighbourhood houses. Having worked in local and state government, where I really enjoyed seeing policy ideas become on-ground action and programs, I looked at Alphington Community Centre and thought, wouldn't that be a great place to work? And now, 8 years on, I can honestly tell you that neighbourhood houses truly are life-changing places at the most important domestic and low-key scale that you can possibly imagine. Kindness and genuine connection with those that are most in need are at the heart of what we do. Every house in our network will have stories about community members who've been coming along for 20 years, and every house will be welcoming new people into the fold each week through programs and workshops and events that provide gentle and genuine entry points targeted at the community members most in need in their specific neighbourhood. Yarra's neighbourhood houses support people for the short and long term. We help people make friends, find the community resources they need, share their interests, get to know their neighbours, build skills, learn, engage and enjoy life. We're there for the good times and the hard times. We know about grandchildren on the way, who runs a footy club, community friendships, local schools, local events, how to enrol in kinder, council reviews, what's happening at the library, family illnesses, where to get food with dignity if you're struggling to feed your family, how to access the pool if you can't afford the fees, compost bins, the list just goes on and on. This partnership framework articulates the unique nature of each house in Yarra, whilst highlighting the underpinning community values that are shared across them all, values that are also shared by Council. We appreciate the collegiate connections we have both with councillors and with staff in so many areas of Yarra Council. And we're keen to grow and build strategic alliances and partnership opportunities into the future. The hopeful endorsement of this partnership framework is a great time to emphasise that your investment in our neighbourhood houses is leading to amazing shared outcomes on the ground for all of us, but most importantly, I think, for the most vulnerable in the Yarra community. And I'd just also like to add thank you to Kathy and Malcolm and Sarah and Taryn for their fabulous work and on this framework. Yeah, so thanks so much.
Thank you for your submission. I'd now like to call on Jane Tonkin.
It's nice to come with a positive message. Good evening, Chair, councillors and council staff. My name is Jane Tonkin and I'm the Executive Officer at Fitzroy Learning Network, one of the 9 neighbourhood houses in the City of Yarra. I'm speaking in support of the endorsement of the Neighbourhood House Partnership Framework. We are tremendously excited about this framework. The 9 houses have fed into its development and the result is a document that articulates well the collaborative relationship between council and the houses. Fitzroy Learning Network has been engaging with its local community for nearly 40 years. At the core of our work is connecting and collaborating with community to reduce the hurdles that vulnerable people face every day, to increase access to opportunity and to build community connectedness. Social change is at the heart of our existence and we enact this through a broad program that includes direct support, community gatherings, education and events, all in partnership with Council. We are most known for our work with refugees and asylum seekers. This is our foundation. And even within a changing settlement environment, we are still at the coalface with the more recent influx of families from Afghanistan and Ukraine. There is a definite expansion to our demographic, though, with a significant surge in people attending Fitzroy Learning who are lonely and isolated, or dealing with mental health issues or substance abuse. I have been working at Fitzroy Learning Network for 2.5 years, and yes, that means I joined the organisation in the middle of a pandemic. Interesting timing, but a great way to get to know an organisation and its community. In the last 2 years, the demand for our food relief has more than doubled, and alongside weekly grocery collection, we now provide lunches for about 60 people every day. The framework acknowledges the importance of social connectivity and civic participation, and we are able to attest to this vital role with an increased demand and enthusiasm for human contact and social gatherings. The data snapshot in the framework displays the bang for buck, if you like, that neighbourhood houses provide. These tangible stats tell the story of how well positioned we are to provide a conduit between the community and council. And this is the power of our collaboration with you. The current work by the houses on a climate emergency action and resilience plan supported by council demonstrates the partnership and the role of neighbourhood houses in supporting council's own objectives to bolster the climate response at a community level. I want to thank the community team at council and council more broadly for the investment in this framework, and with my colleagues we look forward to bringing it to life in partnership with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now call on Julie Johnson.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, councillors and council staff. My name is Julie Johnston. I'm the manager of the North East Neighbourhood House Network. Our network consists of 34 neighbourhood houses across the north east of Melbourne. The City of Yarra provides exemplary support for the 9 neighbourhood houses that serve the residents of Yarra. I'd like to thank the Council for the work that you've done in developing this partnership framework. It demonstrates an understanding of the work that neighbourhood houses and the value that they bring to the community. The dollar figure of that value, or bang for buck as Jane refers to, is $14.6 million for the year 2022. This figure was calculated based on a model that was developed by Deloitte Access Economics. But it's the stories that we heard from the other speakers, the previous speakers that have shared tonight, that are just a few of the many examples of what this value looks like in real life. Staff and volunteers at neighbourhood houses across the municipality are extraordinarily committed to supporting their communities. In my role as network manager, I work across 5 local government areas: Yarra, Darebin, Banyule, Nillumbik and Whittlesea. Yarra is often looked to as a standard for best practice in supporting neighbourhood houses. The funding, staff allocation, access to buildings, memorandum of understanding and the shared action plans that we've had in the past have all contributed to this vital support. Council's support builds the capacity of neighbourhood houses and their ability to work together as a team. The proposed partnership was developed via a thorough process and demonstrates the commitment of all parties to work collaboratively. The North East Neighbourhood House Network and our state peak body, Neighbourhood Houses Victoria, were pleased to be able to contribute to the development of the document. The team who prepared the framework, Malcolm, Sarah, Kathy and Tara, are to be commended for the quality document which other local governments will look to across the state when they're working on their partnership agreements with neighbourhood houses. The partnership framework will provide a solid foundation for years to come by articulating the structure of the relationships, expectations between council and houses, and it sets the strategic directions based on the current council plan. I support the recommendation that council endorses the Yarra Neighbourhood House Partnership Framework. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your submission. I'll now ask councillor colleagues if you have any questions for officers at this point in time. No, I will now look for a way forward. Councillor Mohammed. And were you wanting to move the officer recommendations? Councillor Stone, second? Great. Councillor Mohammed.
I really want to thank all the neighbourhood houses. I think coming into a new country is hard enough, and then navigating through things You're the people that help the new people, make them feel comfortable and give them that comfort in navigating through the area and how to do things, where to go, you know, from teaching them basic English to, you know, the local grocery shops and where to do what, and the health centre. So I think you guys do a lot of work which sometimes might not look like it's appreciated, but it is appreciated a lot through the community members that I conversate with sometimes. And I just want to recommend you all, apologies for all the work that you do for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Councillor Mohammed, and I endorse everything that you have said, and also thank our submitters tonight. They've just provided the best advertisement for neighbourhood houses as if it was needed, but also a very compelling argument for adopting the framework tonight. I don't need to add to all the wonderful things about neighbourhood houses except to say that I don't know where we would have been without them in the last 3 to 4 years. The amount of support provided to extremely needy and vulnerable people throughout the lockdowns and the COVID was just phenomenal. You were there, you really are the heart of the community, and I'm very proud to be part of a council that supports you. Thank you, Julie, for highlighting the leadership role that Yarra Council is seen to take. It's best practice in our relationship with neighbourhood houses. I agree it's something that we have as a strength, and I do particularly, I know you shouldn't do this, but I do want to just name Kathy Vrettis as a very long-standing linchpin between the council and community houses, and for the tireless and unseen work that she does in keeping that relationship going. I do also want to pick up on the dollar amount that Julie Johnson picked up on. It's also quoted in the wonderful report here. There's a big focus on the dollar at the moment and what everyone's getting for their dollar. They don't often see the unseen work that people get for the dollars. $2.95 for every dollar of income is returned at the neighbourhood houses. $7.71 worth for every dollar of coordination funding, and $697 of value for every hour that a neighbourhood house operates. They're stunning results. Anyone would be proud to get them. And it's because of the hard work of the coordinators, their volunteers, their staff, and also the Yarra staff as well. So more strength to your arm. We've got a growing population. You're going to be needed more than ever. More isolation in apartment dwelling, and you're going to play a critical role into the future. Thank you for what you do and for your support of this framework.
Thank you. Now, are there any other councillors that would like to speak for or against this item?
If I could, I'd just like to affirm the excellent words from Councillor Mohammed and Councillor Stone, and to congratulate the submitters and the work and achievements you're achieving, and well done. Thank you.
Councillor Wade.
I'm just going to pile on the love fest because it is sometimes the council chamber is a time, you know, we come together and we debate things, and this is just a really nice opportunity to recognise like amazing work that is being done and an amazing partnership here. Jane, Tony, Leanne, Julie, thank you for coming out on a cold night. Like, it is to come out just to say I'm happy with things is something that's a really nice thing for you to have done, and it's not something that we get that often. So I just wanted to recognise that, as well as all the work you do every day. That 2.6 FTE to 1,000 people contacted per week, that is just a crazy figure, Leanne. That's amazing. 60 lunches every day, Jane. Tony, the new recycling system, I'm so excited to come and use. I had a friend message me the other day and say, hey, I was watching your Instagram stories and I missed writing down where that place was. Where was it? And so I know there's other people who are really excited about that too. So much innovation, so much contact, and everything that my colleagues have said tonight. So yeah, congratulations on everything you do, and thanks for showing up and telling us you appreciate us and our staff too.
Thank you. All right, at this point then, we'll look to put that to a vote. So all those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. This now brings us to 7.7, street tree canopy cover, and the urban forest strategy target update. We have one registered speaker, and that is Shane Delphine.
Hello, Deputy Mayor. Hello, councillors and staff. Canopy cover, as I'm sure everyone here is aware, is critical in so many ways. In particular, in providing shelter and food for insects and wildlife, in helping mitigate climate change in a huge variety of ways, and of course in reducing the urban heat island effect and thus producing more livable streets for our community. YCAN thanks John and the rest of the members of the Yarra Streets Trees team for their important work, including helping produce this update on Yarra's canopy cover. YCAN has, however, two key points to make with respect to tonight's report. The first is that we'd like to see additional work to determine whether the existing 21.25% target is on track to be met by 2040. The suggestion in the report that if the 0.7% canopy increase observed between 2016 and 2021 were to be replicated over the next 25 years, then we would achieve the target by 2046. That strikes us as lacking a little bit of rigour, and we'd like to see much more detailed planning that gives us a level of comfort that it is in fact on target to be achieved in light of the fact, as highlighted in the report, that we've got climate change to contend with, we've got ageing trees to contend with. So can we really get to that 21.25? All that said, in relation to the existing target, we've long argued that given how critical canopy cover is, that greater ambition is required in this regard. A forest is technically defined by canopy cover at 30%. Less than that is actually woodland. And so what Yarra actually has is an urban woodland strategy, not an urban forestry strategy. We'd love to see Yarra adopt a genuine forestry strategy. Nonetheless, we recognise that we can't get to a target of 30% anytime soon. However, we would encourage Council to adopt an interim target of 25% by 2040, so an increase in ambition from the current target. We recognise, of course, that such a target would require potentially difficult decisions to be made about a whole variety of things, including a requirement for additional funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your submission. Councillors, any questions? Yes, Councillor Landis.
I've got three questions for officers. The first question goes to replacement trees. I'm getting a lot of residents telling me about sites around Yarra where there were trees but there are no longer trees. They've either been knocked down or whatever. For example, there's two sites in Stevenson Street, Cremorne. There's a couple in Basisto Street, Albert Street close to Church Street near the library, outside 459 Church Street. Do we have a registry or some way that residents can report broken or stolen trees or knocked down trees that can then be replaced? That's my first question. I've got a couple more to follow.
Yeah, so residents can notify council if a tree has been removed or vandalised, and that will go onto our infield planting program, which is our annual infield program for replacing those types of trees. Yep.
So I assume, is that by email or on the website?
Either or. They could make a call, they could email. Yep, just get in contact and let us know.
Thank you. The second question goes to the pruning of trees around the city. We're seeing, I've had an email today from Kent Street residents who are upset about the heavy pruning that's taking place on trees in and around that area, and also the removal of trees in Hyatt Street. And then we have the concerns about pruning in Swan Street around power lines. Could Council sort of explain that process?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, that's not part of the urban forest strategy. That's a maintenance requirement done through a contractor, and Sam might like to answer that. Thank you.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, Council's obligation under the electric line clearance regulations are onerous. They're quite technical and complex. Essentially what we need to do is make sure we prune them so heavily and hard that allows for at least 2 years' worth of growth and then stay well clear of high voltage power lines. What that means is hard pruning often occurs and they damage the trees. At some point, trees are so hard up against high voltage power lines, you've essentially got two options. A hard prune, which fatally wounds and damages the tree, which essentially you're taking off one of the structural limbs. It also imbalances the weight of the tree. It renders that tree, it's going to die, or you take it out. The alternative is that this council could join most other metropolitan councils in advocating for a relaxation of those very hard rules, which were largely set up for bushfire-prone areas, and I don't know how bushfire-prone Yarra is, but we would certainly, as officers at officer level, recommend an advocacy program to advocate for the state to relax those rules because it compromises the team's effort on urban forest and canopy when we're trying to grow the number of trees in streets and yet we have to hard prune them.
And the other question I received today revolves around the golf course and the opportunities to increase urban forest around the golf course and improve biodiversity, of course.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, the golf course has many hectares. It could easily take more trees. We've proposed some trees have recently been taken out. We're proposing a heavy planting program next year. The minute the risk mitigation works are complete. We're also recommending rewilding some of the areas between fairways. Many tens of thousands of plants, shrubs and grasses could be accommodated there. So it would certainly be an area where you could afford to invest more in canopy trees, subject to resourcing, of course.
Councillor Jolly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, Acting Mayor. My question is to Mr Hewitt on that topic of the second point that Councillor Lundy's raised in relation to the intersection of Hyatt and Coppin and the fact that trees have come down for the reasons that you've said. I understand what the point that you're making. Would it be possible for Council to send an email to councillors explaining what you just said in an email version, because we're getting lots of pushback from residents who are very concerned about this. Secondly, maybe through your office and maybe the Mayor or the Deputy Mayor's office, maybe drafting up some type of submission that we could make to the relevant minister along the lines of what you suggested. I think that would be really, really useful because it's quite clear that the rules that we're forced to apply to are better related to suburban and regional councils than inner city councils. Maybe in Alphington and to a certain degree in Burnley, but definitely not in the rest of the municipality.
Just to jump in, the CEO's indicated they'll respond.
Thank you, CEO, Mayor and Mr Hewitt.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you, Councillor Jolly, I'd be really happy for us to put a statement on our webpage that describes the process of electrical line clearance and the restrictions so that the whole of the community has access to that information, so we can take care of that in the next day or so and make that a regular feature when the pruning, when the contractors are out doing that work. It would be for, in response to your second question regarding advocacy, it would be it's open to council tonight to formally form a view that you want to add that to your advocacy approach. If you do, I very happily take that on.
Councillor Wade?
Yes, could I ask a related question? But I think it's related to Ms Osman because I think it's planning, but it's related to the hard pruning situation. I believe in one of the applications recently, and I think it might have been the one we had tonight, we had power lines being undergrounded. Is that something that we kind of actively explore with new developments? Because obviously that helps with canopy as well.
Through you, Chair, yes, we do actively encourage the undergrounding of power lines. Obviously, a development needs to have a certain scale before we can put a proposition forward. There is nothing in the planning scheme that requires somebody to do that, but usually it's through negotiations with a major redevelopment of a site, such as the Harry the High site.
Councillor Stone.
I was just going to, how do I put this as a question to the CEO? Is the CEO aware that about 3 or 4 years ago, I think Yarra Council got a minor exemption to the electrical line clearance regulations that we were able to actually prune less than is required? It would be worth finding that out, and also to look up previous advocacy that we've undertaken on this as well, including a very expensive court case some years ago.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, I'm not aware of the Council's efforts a few years ago. What we do know, though, is that there was a period where Energy Safe Victoria allowed a non-compliance. That period ended in July 2021. So we no longer have that grace period. The fines are heavy. They will fine the council per span for every non-compliance that's per power pole, and they will fine you per tree. You know, my obligation is to protect council's interest and to avoid risk there. So those, we continue to advocate to our colleagues at ESV, but the rules are pretty clear.
Just if I may, Deputy Mayor, just to build on what Mr Hewitt offered, I would also be really happy to investigate what the MAV has done previously, and I'm mindful that MAV State Council's coming up, so it might be something Council wants to turn its mind to.
Good suggestion, thank you. Councillor Jolly.
Through you to the CEO. So is your suggestion to have some type of an amendment to this recommendation be a standalone motion, or be a standalone motion to say that council, endorses lobbying the state government along the lines of what Mr Hewitt said? If it's the latter, maybe I'll just foreshadow such a motion for the next meeting, so it's done properly and rather on the run, so to speak, tonight, if that's okay.
And I'd be happy to be assisted by Mr Hewitt. I think, given that the works are occurring now, and it's very unlikely that any advocacy at this point in time will have an impact on the current clearance program, it is a matter that I think could benefit from further investigation, and so I would be very pleased for us to bring a report that investigates a bit of background, if you like, for council to consider at the next council meeting, including any previous advocacy that council's been involved in other state agencies and the work of other councils. So I'll do that. I don't need a resolution to do that tonight.
Thank you. Councillors, are there other questions? Councillor Stone.
Sorry, I just have a couple. Paragraph 24 in this report shows where the increase in capacity for canopy trees is in its road space. So it suggests that that's limited because there's lots of things under the road. And we are, combined with the point that Mr. Shane, My mind's gone. Mr Delphine said tonight, my mind's gone blank tonight, about the fact that we are going to have to remove a lot of trees which are at the end of their useful life, that we are going to lose canopy as well as trying to build new, that there's going to be gaps in the canopy over time. Is the notion of a fixed percentage by a particular time of increase in canopy, is that actually useful to aim for in absolute terms, given that the idea is we're going to have to replace our tree canopy, which is why we've got an urban forest strategy over time, and that will involve losses before there's gains?
I think, through you, Deputy Mayor, we need to do further research and predictions in that regard. It's a really difficult target to try and work out, and we think that we can probably do that by the time we do the next canopy coverage, sort of more comprehensive work, and look at it then. We've looked at examples across other councils, and everyone's very different, and other councils are reviewing them as well. So, and Yarra's particularly more complex because we are losing so many of our more mature trees. City of Melbourne are a little bit further ahead of us in that they started many years ago. So we'll continue to look at it. I don't think it's realistic to come up with a figure at the moment.
I might add to that as well. Like we do have an over-mature forest in Yarra, and that was identified in the urban forest strategy. Over the last 5 years, we've planted almost 4,000 new trees and grown our number of trees in Yarra by around 18%. We're not going to see the benefit of those trees that have been planted for 10, 20, 30 years. So we're talking about really long-term change and long-term targets. And as you've identified, there will be some short-term losses in canopy as we start to transition away from an over-mature urban forest and start to rebalance the kind of age profile of urban forest.
Can I ask a second? A second one is about species selection and the intersection with our nature strategy. And the main focus of the urban forest strategy is to get canopy for shade and urban heat. But of course it provides habitat, as Mr Delphine has obviously pointed out. How is that coordinated? Because some of the smaller trees we're planting, like crepe myrtles, because they fit in, offer next to no value in terms of biodiversity or habitat. Others do. How are these things coordinated? How do you get the maximum value out of the urban forest strategy?
Yes, there's a number of factors that we consider when we're thinking about species across our urban forest. One of the other key things that we try to do as well is build resilience to the effects of climate change and disease and other things by creating really good diversity across our urban forest. That's one of our key objectives, getting good diversity through family, through species, through genus. In terms of biodiversity benefit, as you've identified, there's some species that are better at providing shade and those kind of human-focused environmental cooling benefits. And there's other species that might be better at providing some of those biodiversity benefits. And it's really about us focusing those biodiversity benefits to the objectives of our nature strategy and those biodiversity corridors throughout Yarra, and trying to achieve in other areas where we might have more people using the street, achieving those environmental services benefits.
Last question, if I may. There's a clause at the end which Mr Delphine also referred to, which was this will need further funding in the future. What would additional funding provide, given that there are going to be limited places where additional trees can be planted? And more is not necessarily going to be either achievable or a solution to the problems we have.
Through you, Chair, it's getting harder and harder to find locations in Yarra, and they're getting more expensive every time because they're much more complex. So to keep the rate of the number of trees up, the funding obviously would need to increase, but that doesn't necessarily mean we'll find the locations either. So it's a bit of a juggling act. It really, I think there needs to be a bit more work in the next few years to try and work out what we're going to have to do. We've got enough time, I think, in the next few years to be able to meet our targets, and then it's going to get harder and harder. So we'll definitely have to look at that.
Are there any other questions at this point in time? No? All right, I'll be looking for a way forward. Councillor Wade.
I've foreshadowed an alternative motion, that one, which is additional to the officer recommendation.
Thank you. I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Mohammed. Councillor Stone.
I have a proposed amendment, additional clause, which I have just circulated, which is that officers provide a report to Council on possible mechanisms for increasing the urban forest on private land by the December Council meeting. And that could be a later date if it was considered to be necessary, because I know it'll take a while. Could be February.
Could we
seek the CEO's input on that?
I would prefer February, please.
Councillor Wade.
I'm happy to accept that.
Okay. Councillor Mohammed.
Oh, sorry. I'm happy to accept that as also.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wade, if you'd like to speak to the motion.
Yes, I would. So thank you very much, officers, for this comprehensive report. It was really great to see all of the data for something that I think, as we've seen from the discussion tonight, this councillor group cares about a lot, and we know our community cares about a lot. And thank you, Mr. Delphine, for coming along as well and representing that community who cares so much. And I appreciated learning about the fact that we're only an urban woodland strategy, and I'm keen to get us to urban forest too. That's an interesting classification point that I'll bear in mind. What I've done here with these extra bits and pieces is we've had various discussions about canopy cover targets today. Mr. Delphine submitted on it as well. I think basically from what officers have said tonight and what's also in the report, 2026 seems like a really good time to do that. We'll be doing a lot of the work anyway to check what's going on, and also we'll get the benefit of some of our surrounding councils who will have done a little bit more work then about what's realistic and whatnot. And we also can ensure that and I think this is point number, it's one of the points in there, comparing apples with apples, that we're also comparing public realm with public realm and private realm with private realm, and public and private with public and private, which I think is important and something that some of the other urban forest strategies target differently at the moment. So just making sure that we know what we're talking about. I think also reporting on that public realm data separately is quite important and quite interesting, because it's ultimately something we have more control over, is the canopy cover in public space where council owns the land. So I'm really interested to see that, and some of that was in this report that you can find it yourselves when you cut out the private bit. That said, the private bit is also very important, so I welcome Councillor Stone's addition there to making sure that we can, basically get as much growing everywhere that we can. The other thing that I've kind of drawn out in this is just in terms of the placement of trees and recognising, I'm not sure if it was in the final version of the report or not, but I saw a statistic recently that said the proportion of trees that we're planting in the footpath has gone down compared to what it was. We're putting more in the road space and less in the footpath. And from an accessibility point of view, I think that's really, really important. We know that in some of our older streets, particularly kind of Richmond, Collingwood, things are really tight. And so making sure that wheelchairs and people with prams and all kinds of accessibility requirements can get down those footpaths is so important, and just as much as having trees is. And so recognising that the good work is already happening there, and encouraging that to continue. I would have included something about the hard pruning requirements and advocacy, but it sounds like that's going to happen anyway. I also wanted to recognise a really, I think, impressive point that our tree count has gone up really dramatically by 18%, so that's significantly more than the canopy coverage has gone up. So basically we're planting more trees than we're seeing reflected in our canopy right now, which I think makes sense from what we heard from officers that they haven't grown enough yet. So I know that in the last 2 or 3 years on council, this council has chosen each budget period to accelerate tree planting, to put extra money into tree planting, and I think those numbers show that we're getting them in there. They just need to grow more. So that's a really good sign, and I think at the moment that's very much our priority is continuing to get trees in the ground. And thank you to members of our community who keep telling us they want trees in the ground and making room for them on their streets, because every street that we have that says, yes, please put trees in the ground, and yes, please, we like your plan, that's more trees more quickly and allows us to move on to putting more trees elsewhere rather than kind of revisiting the same ones. So thank you to officers for all the amazing work in this, and it spans a fair few departments by the time you've got design and delivery and infill, etc., etc. So thank you to every department, and please pass that on.
Thank you. Councillor Mohammed.
I'll just echo what Councillor Wade said. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers for or against on this item? No? All right, we will take it to a vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor. I just had something personal came up and I think I'll have to leave early. Thank you. I apologise to the public.
Thank you for your attendance this evening. This now brings us to our next agenda item. Okay. 7.8, Governance Report, August 2023. We don't have any registered speakers for this item, so I'll now check with my councillor colleagues if there are any questions for officers at this point in time. No? Okay, I will now be looking for a way forward. Sorry, was that Councillor Jolly?
Yeah,
yes.
Happy to move it.
Okay, thank you. And I'm looking for a seconder. Oh, Councillor Glenatsis. Thank you. Councillor Jolly, would you like to speak to it?
It's just the usual comprehensive report from this department, and I endorse everything it says and happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Glenatsis.
I acknowledge Councillor Jolly's contribution, yes. What's the word for it? Endorse it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to this motion? Okay, we will then put it to the vote. This is for the Governance Report, August 2023. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. We now move to Section 8, Notices of Motion. We don't have any listed this evening, which then brings us to Section 9, which is Petitions and Joint Letters. This is an opportunity that exists for any councillors to table a petition or joint letter for council's consideration. Councillors, do we have any petitions or joint letters for tabling this evening? Councillor Landis.
Yeah, I've got a petition from 13 residents from local who are requesting a shared zone on Little Buckingham Street, Richmond. As I said, this petition contains 13 signatures from local residents requesting that council implement a safer shared zone. We are concerned for the safety of pedestrians walking in the shared zone, residents trying to exit their garages and the risks associated with speeding cars. In our opinion, the current safety implementations are inadequate and request that the council take action to improve the safety of the shared zone. I'd like to table this petition and move that it be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Landis. I'll be looking for a seconder for this item. Councillor Wade. Yep. Councillor Landis, do you want to speak to this further?
Only to say that increasingly we are hearing from residents who are having to live in highly contested streets where they're having to fight with traffic. People want to access their roads to walk because footpaths are too contested. This sort of phenomena is increasingly becoming more apparent. So yes, I understand where these residents are taking this particular case, and I think I'd like to see officers have a look at the street and see what opportunities can be done to make the street more workable and provide a better experience for all the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wade, is there anything you'd like to mention?
No, echoing Councillor Landis, I think shared spaces are a good thing, and we recognise that in our transport strategy, and so it's nice our residents do too.
Thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak for or against this? All right, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you. Are there any other petitions or joint letters? No? All right, wonderful. We'll move on to the next item, which is Section 10, questions without notice. This is an opportunity to provide councillors to ask questions of the Mayor or the Chief Executive Officer. Councillors, do we have any questions without notice this evening?
Yep.
Councillor Landis.
Thank you. I've got 3 questions. I'll take them one at a time. First of all, to the Acting Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor, you may be aware that Dr Nico Clark has recently announced his retirement as the Director of the North Richmond Medically Supervised Injecting Room. Dr Clark was the Foundation Director of the EMSA, and whose work and dedication has ensured its success as a world-class facility that has and continues to bring positive health outcomes and dignity to a vulnerable group in our community and saving lives. Dr Clark has brought an incredible international experience to enable world-leading innovations around Hep C programs and opioid replacement therapies, as well as engendering relationships with third-party providers in setting up innovative wraparound services. My question goes to whether we could write a letter of gratitude and appreciation and to wish Dr Clark the very best for the future. Thank you.
Happy to.
My next question goes to rate notices that have recently gone out to ratepayers that now show a general rate as well as separate curbside waste charge and a general waste charge. I have been receiving some correspondence, and I know that the rate notice I received, where there has been a nominal change in valuations, has shown that the general rates in my instance have been discounted and the waste charges have been added. I was just wondering if officers could again explain how to understand these rate notices in the context of the new valuations for 2024 and the subtraction of the waste, separated waste charge. Thank you.
Wei Chen, could you please assist with this?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Landis. If I can start by explaining the rate cap concept. So the rate cap means our total rates revenue is capped by the rate cap, which is 3.5% for 23-24. So that means our revenue, total revenue, is within that cap. So we separate the waste charge out, but if we add the general rates and waste charge, it's still within that 3.5% compared to last year's total rates revenue. So for our total, that's capped. However, the impact on the individual rates notice, it really depends on that individual property. So there are 2 factors impact on individual rates notice. The first one is the separation of waste charges, and that is depending upon whether you receive waste service or not for the curbside, and also on the value of your property. There are comprehensive figures and personas on our website to explain more about that, but to give a very normal example of 1 million property, if you live in a house in Yarra with 1 million roughly property value and you receive a curbside service, then that means your rates notice total will be about $60 higher than if you didn't have a separation of waste charges. But then, most of the council properties, 88% of council properties are within 200k to 2 million. So if you have 200k property value, and receive waste service, then your rates notice will be $18 more. Whereas if you are 2 million, then it's about $120 extra. So that's the impact of separation of waste charges. If you don't receive a waste service, then you will see a reduction on your rates notice. And the second factor impacting on the individual rates notice is the movement of the property value. So that's compare your individual property value compared to last year and compare that movement to the average movement of all the properties in Yarra. And Yarra's property market is quite volatile. So in this current year, we actually saw an average decrease of about 2%. So most of our properties in Yarra has a decrease in value, which means if your property value is decreased but not as decreased as average, then you are still considered as having a relatively positive movement on your property value, which means the increase on your rates notice will be more than 3.5%. But if your the decrease of your property value is more significant than the average, like if your value is decreased by 10%, then the your rates notice will potentially have a less than 3.5% increase or a reduction. So that's a different impact on the individual rates notices. Is there any further questions? Does that make sense? Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Landis.
Last question goes to the implementation of the pedestrian crossing in Cremorne. Just wondering if we have an update on how that's going.
Through you, Mayor, we anticipate it will be constructed in September.
Councillors, are there any other questions with that notice? No? All right, thank you. We'll now move on to delegates' reports. This is an opportunity for councillors to present a delegates' report. Do we have any this evening, councillors, that would like to be tabled? No? Okay. We'll now move on to item 12, general business, and this is an opportunity to provide it to councillors to raise items of general business to the council's consideration. Councillors, do we have any items of general business this evening? No? Okay. That then brings us to agenda item 13, urgent business. This is an opportunity to provide the Chief Executive Officer to introduce items of urgent business. Ms Wilkinson, do we have any items of urgent business this evening?
No.
No? Wonderful. This then brings us to agenda item 14, confidential business. And for this, we are going to have to close this meeting to the general public so that the meeting be closed to members of the public in accordance with section 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020 to allow for consideration of confidential information. I will now be seeking a mover and a seconder. Councillor Landis. Seconder? Councillor Wade. All right, I will now put that to the vote. Yep. Yep, that's carried. Sorry, I'm now putting it to the vote. That is carried unanimously.
Councillors, I'll declare a conflict of interest on this item, and so I'll leave. So good night.